Hello students, we are learning lesson 9 force and laws of motion, and this is the second video of the chapter, that is video 2 of the chapter. Today we are going to learn about frictional force. Previously we have already learned what is force, what is balanced force and what is unbalanced force. Now today we will learn what is frictional force and explain how the frictional force affects the motion of an object. Frictional force we can see on page number 150. Now see, box is being pushed by these two children. They are pushing the box in one direction. Now this box is touching the surface of the floor. Now suppose the floor is rough. So when they are pushing the box, the roughness of the floor will oppose the motion of the object towards right hand side. So towards the right hand side the box is being pushed, and towards the left hand side the surface is opposing the motion. It is not allowing the box to be moved. Now again these two children, they try to push it harder. That means the amount of force applied is more now. Here see the shorter length of the arrow shows that amount of force is lesser, and here amount of force on the right hand side they are increasing. As they are increasing the amount of force, the same amount of force, same as the length on the right hand side of the arrow, see the length on the left hand side of the arrow. This is the pushing force and this is the frictional force. That is the force which is applied by the surface of the floor in the opposite direction on the object is called frictional force. So both the forces are now equal. So this is the case of balanced force. On both the sides same amount of force, the box is not yet moving. Now in the third case, the pushing force is bigger than the opposing frictional force, and in this case the box starts moving. That means here the case becomes of unbalanced force. So the frictional force cannot hold the box now. It has to allow the box to move as the pushing force is greater than the frictional force. So there are three situations I have shown. There is a pushing force and the frictional force. Pushing force is smaller than the frictional force. The pushing force and the frictional force are equal. It is not moving. But when the pushing force becomes more than the frictional force, the box starts moving. So these are the effects of the frictional force on the object. Now let us see how to write the answer. What is frictional force? Explain how it affects the motion of the object. Frictional force. If an object is moving on a surface, coming in contact with the surface, see this object is moving on this floor and the object is in contact with the floor, it is touching the floor. So if an object is moving on a surface, coming in contact with the surface opposes the motion of the object. This opposite force applied by the surface on the object is called frictional force. Now see, this opposing force applied by the surface on the object is called frictional force. The opposing force applied by the surface on the object is called frictional force. Effect of object, that is effect on the object, on the motion of the object. If we push a box, now all these three examples, whatever I have explained, these three examples in sentence wise you have to explain over here. And you have to draw the diagram. No need of drawing this diagram of the children pushing it. You can draw the box and show the amount of pushing force. You label it as pushing force and this is friction force. Again this is pushing force, you write this is pushing force and this is frictional force. This is the effects of frictional force on the object. If we push a box on a rough floor with a small force, then the box does not move because the frictional force acting in a direction opposite to the push is there. Because of the frictional force it is not moving. The frictional force and the force applied on the box while pushing is balanced. Therefore the box does not move if it is balanced. This case you have to see if it is balanced. Here the frictional force is less than the opposing force. Here the frictional force and the opposing force are balanced. So once you write the sentence, draw the diagram. Then it is not moving. Then the third case, if the pushing force becomes bigger, than the frictional force. Then there is an unbalanced force. So the box starts moving. So this is the situation. If the pushing force is bigger than the frictional force, then the box starts moving. Now if the pushing force becomes bigger than the frictional force, the box starts moving. And till what situation it will go on moving? An object moving with uniform velocity. It will move with uniform velocity when the pushing force and the frictional force are balanced. Once it starts moving, then suppose both the forces remain the same and there is no net external force applied on it, then the body will continue moving with uniform velocity. That means the pushing force and the external force, once the body starts moving, this amount should not change. This amount, say suppose it is 8 Newton and if this is 5 Newton, it should remain the same. Then the body will continue moving with uniform motion. Now if an unbalanced force is applied on an object, then there will be change either in the speed or the direction of the motion. Thus, to accelerate the motion of an object, an unbalanced force is required. That means once it starts moving in a definite direction, suppose you want to accelerate, you want to increase the motion, that is increase the speed, then you have to increase the pushing force and the force of friction should remain the same. So now if an unbalanced net external force is added to it, then the body will be accelerated. Either it will increase the speed or it can decrease the speed. Suppose the floor becomes more rough, then the speed may also decrease. This is the way you have to explain the answer. That's all in today's video. We'll meet in the next video.